Coming up, the Utah Jazz beat up on the Philadelphia 76ers, and the Lakers lost to the Grizzlies without Ja Morant. This is Locked On Now NBA.
The biggest games, the best performances, expert analysis. You are Locked On Now.
What's up, everybody? You are listening to Locked On Now NBA, local experts with the biggest stories on the hardwood. I'm your host, Daniella Bruce, and thank you for making Locked On Now your first listen every weekday. Our Locked On NBA hosts are here to help break down everything from Thursday night, starting with the Utah Jazz, who continued their road trip and continued to show zero signs of jet lag. Utah went into Philadelphia and won big in our biggest game of the night.
The biggest game.
The Utah Jazz went into Philadelphia and stomped the 76ers by more than 20 points on Thursday night. Utah won its third in a row, and this offense has Locked On Jazz excited postgame.
The Utah Jazz have won their sixth in a row, blowing out the Philadelphia 76ers in Philadelphia, and they're making a case for being a dominant offensive team. This is David Locke with Locked On Jazz. The Jazz win by 22 in Philadelphia. It's their sixth straight win. It's their third straight on this road trip, and they are throttling the best defenses in the NBA. Tonight, the Utah Jazz, who came in with the number one offense in the NBA, had an offensive rating of 126. The league average is 109. They had a 131 last night in Minnesota. They had a 138 against Boston, a 139 against Portland. And the Utah Jazz are making a quick claim to being the best offense maybe ever in the NBA. Tonight, they did it with 8 different players scoring in double figures. It's hard to grasp that a team without one of the big names could be that great offensively, but it's possible this team is. We're talking about it coming up on Locked On Jazz.
The Memphis Grizzlies had to play the Lakers without Ja Morant and more last night, but Locked On Grizzlies fills you in on how Memphis dealt with the adversity and got a win at home.
So let's set the scene for the Grizzlies coming into tonight's game. Sean Coleman here from the Locked On Grizzlies podcast. Last night, the Grizzlies suffered one of their more frustrating losses of the season, seeing a 5-game winning streak snapped. Less than 90 minutes before tonight's game, the Grizzlies learned they would be without Ja Morant, or Dillon Brooks already being without Ja Morant, with now both players in the NBA's health and safety protocols. All this coming into a game where they were going to be facing LeBron James and Anthony Davis as the Lakers were in town. And what did the Grizzlies do? They won 108-95, as you would expect for them to do. Yes, LeBron James and Anthony Davis combined to play 75 minutes in tonight's game. But you can make an argument that Desmond Bane and Jaren Jackson Jr., with a combined 48 points, were just as effective as LeBron and Anthony Davis. But the keys to the victory were the Grizzlies bench playing against the Lakers bench that arguably has been a top 5 NBA reserve unit. The Grizzlies bench was the significantly more productive reserve unit. And as I mentioned on yesterday's show, the Grizzlies were going to have to find advantages on the margins. The Grizzlies had 17 offensive rebounds and also were able to have 10 more points off turnovers, forcing the Lakers into 22 turnovers and scoring 22 points off those turnovers. The Grizzlies were able to use their advantages on the hustle, being opportunistic and on the boards to get a big victory once again, against a team that was more talented than them. And not only that, the Grizzlies also added a loss to the Lakers' loss column, owning the Lakers' 2022 first-round pick. Layers and layers of positivity. The positive vibes from tonight erased the negative vibes from last night. We'll have this and much more on tomorrow's edition of the Locked On Grizzlies podcast. Have a great night.
The Los Angeles Lakers lost on the road to the Memphis Grizzlies Thursday and fell back to 500 in the process. Locked On Lakers says this time it was turnovers that kept LA out of the win column.
This is Andy Kamenetsky, co-host of Locked On Lakers podcast, and whatever momentum the Lakers thought they might have had building up after Tuesday's very decisive win over Boston went away in a hurry. 108-95 loss to the Memphis Grizzlies. A lot of areas that you can point to, but the biggest reason, without question, turnovers. The Lakers turned the ball over 22 times, gave up 27 points in the process. Memphis actually gave up 21 points of their own off turnovers, so you got to really want it to lose that particular battle. Like, that is just straight up incompetence in terms of taking care of the ball and also trying to alleviate the mistakes when you don't take care of the ball. A lot more to get into, so make sure you are subscribing to the Locked On Lakers YouTube channel and that you are making Locked On Lakers your first listen wherever you get your podcasts.
The San Antonio Spurs were able to pick up a win last night over the Denver Nuggets with help from DeJounte Murray.
This is Jeff Garcia with Locked On Spurs. He'll give you a quick recap of the Spurs win over the Denver Nuggets in San Antonio. Spurs snapped their 2-game losing streak, beating Denver 123-111. And DeJounte Murray led the way with 20 points, 9 assists, 8 rebounds for the Spurs. You got to also like the fact that there was just all-around contributions from everyone. Derek White, 23 points. Lonnie Walker, 21 points off the bench. It was a complete balance. And what you like about this win for San Antonio is not only they snapped their 2-game losing streak, but they were able to weather the storm. And a young team like San Antonio want to see little development throughout the season. They got one today. Denver Nuggets stormed back in the third quarter, cut their double-figure deficit to San Antonio to single digits, but the Spurs, as I mentioned, were able to hold on to the lead and pretty much get a wire-to-wire win over Denver. Now, Denver was coming off the second game of a back-to-back. Denver did look tired towards the end of the game, but nevertheless, the Spurs took care of business, and they needed it because they're going to face Denver again Saturday night. The win moves San Antonio to 9-15, and Popovich 17 more wins till he gets that top spot on the All-NBA coaches win list. This is Jeff Garcia with Locked On Spurs. Subscribe to Locked On Spurs wherever you get your favorite podcast.
And that's a wrap for us today. Thank you all so much for making Locked On Now your first listen every day. For more on the association and your favorite team, make your second listens Locked On NBA and your team's local Locked On podcast. I'm Daniella Bruce, and this has been Locked On Now.